My name's Alan Fortenberry. I was born in St. Bernard's Hospital in Jonesboro, but I lived in Leachville, Arkansas, out in the country. My parents were Douglas and Minnie Fortenberry.
Tell me a little about them.
Well, my dad was a farmer in eastern Arkansas, northeast Arkansas, about as far northeast as we are northwest. But he farmed, small farmer, rented most of the land that we farmed. Grew cotton, soybeans, wheat, those type crops, row crop type farming. He was born in eastern Arkansas, but he moved to the location where I lived all of my childhood in the country, about 7 miles from Leachville, Arkansas. My mother was a homemaker. She probably worked a lot harder than my daddy did. She did all of the raising of the kids and everything, to the point that when we got old enough to drive a tractor, then we started driving a tractor and farming too, and being a farmhand. And that was kind of my life. I went to school at Leachville, Arkansas, graduated from high school at Leachville, Arkansas, small town, about population probably about 1,500, 2,000 people. Changed a lot since then, a very depressed area now. But and my mother was born in that area. That's how they met up. My dad moved to that area. He had different jobs when he was young. He did building of railroad beds and laying across ties and things like that, just to have some money, like during the Depression. He farmed with mules for most of his life, pulling plows and stuff like that. So very strenuous life. I remember we raised some hogs. Mom always wanted a dairy cow, so she always had a Jersey dairy cow to milk, and Jersey cows have a high butter fat in their milk content, so she made butter and just, had a big garden, canned a lot, sewed a lot, take flour sacks, because they come in pretty material, and make shirts and dresses for us when we was growing up. So it was a wonderful life. I very, very much enjoyed it, but it gave me a sense to live within my means, definitely. And I wasn't the first. My brother went to college at Arkansas State. But I determined, my dad told me that he wanted me to go to college when I got out of high school. And he said, "But I can't afford to send you, so save your money." He told me that like when I was in junior high. And I talked to a guidance counselor, and I was pretty good. I wasn't a whiz in math, but I was pretty good in the sciences and in math. And I, like I say, grown up farming all my life, so agriculture is what I knew, and I knew it pretty well, that type of agriculture. And so the guidance counselor said, "Well, putting these two together, you ought to go into ag engineering." I said, "Sounds good to me." I had no clue what an ag engineer did, but I wanted to go into agriculture engineering. Arkansas State wasn't accredited in engineering, so I came to the University of Arkansas, and that's how I ended up on this part of the state. A young lady that I went to high school with, we dated, and we both came to school over here, but that's my wife now. So we were dating when we were in high school, and we got married when we were in college.
And tell me, who is your wife?
My wife is Patricia Ann Rose, was her maiden name, now Fortenberry.
Explain in your own words how you grew up from a small town country farmer to the CEO of the Beaver Water District. Kind of walk me through the career path there.
My career path, again, is what I think a lot of young people's career path, what they end up finally doing in their lifetime, what they make a career out of, is kind of happenstance, probably more happenstance than it is ingenious design. Again, I decided early that I was going to be an ag engineer, but I had no clue what an ag engineer did. Kind of like the old joke, I'm I'm an engineer. When I got out, when I started school, started college, I couldn't even spell it, and now I am an engineer, you know, and I can spell it. But anyway, my wife and I got married when we were in college, and so she was in medical technology, so she took pre-med courses. She had to have 90 hours, and then she had to finish school down at the Med Center in Little Rock. So I had to, since I was married to her, I had to find a job in Little Rock, and the job that I found was with Arkansas Soil and Water Conservation Commission, and I worked there for 9 years while she finished school. And then got a job. She got a job in an internal medicine clinic there after she got out of school. The state sent me, John Saxton was the director of Soil and Water at that time. Randy Young worked with me, and he became director later. I had some really, really good friends there at Soil and Water, and it was a good education. But is water as a resource. And they sent me back to school for a year, and I got my master's degree. And then I went back to Little Rock. I worked for them 3 or 4 more years, and I wanted to do something because most of my work was involved in planning, watershed type planning, and planning a lot of things. So I had a good relationship with a lot of federal agency people. I knew a lot of people. I knew a lot of legislators because that was one of my jobs assigned to me to during when the legislature was in session, to go over there and go down to the coffee shop and sit around, drink coffee, and talk with legislators. I managed a water development fund when it first started. I worked on the state water plan when it was developed. So a lot of those things put me in touch with a lot of legislators and showed me the legislative method that they use and how you go about legislation. Very, very good education. But I wanted to see something built, and we wanted to move out of Little Rock, come back to Northwest Arkansas. So I interviewed with several different engineering firms and industry, and selected and accepted a job offer from Carl Yates, and I went to work for McGoodwin, Williams and Yates. And I designed, at that time, Clean Water Act had just come into being, so we worked a lot. That's where the money was for consultants, was in wastewater. And so we did a lot of wastewater plants, Springdale's, Rogers, Bentonville's, Gravitz, Pea Ridge, Harrison, Berryville, all of these wastewater plants. And that was a good education as well in wastewater, point source pollution. And I worked for Carl for 10 years, and during that time, we did some work for Beaver Water District. I'd known Dick Starr. Dick was on the commission for the Arkansas Soil and Water Conservation Commission, so my knowledge of Dick went back a long ways. And then when I worked for McGoodwin, we did most all of the work for Beaver Water District, so I became familiar with Beaver Water District. One day, Dick called me and said he'd like to take me out to lunch, and if you know Dick, then that was something special, that Dick was going to buy you a burger. And so we went out, and he bought me a burger, and he asked me if I would like to come to work for him, and I said yes. And so I came to work as the first engineer. That was the position, plant engineer. I came to work for Dick, and I've been here ever since. So that's, like I say, back in junior high when I said I want to be an ag engineer, if I'd have known that I was going to be CEO of the second largest water utility in the state of Arkansas, I really wouldn't know what that meant. I don't know that I could have believed it. But how I got here was just kind of a woven path, and knowing people, not from the standpoint of climbing the ladder or anything like that, but just knowing individuals. Dick knew me from Soil and Water. He knew me from McGoodwin, Williams and Yates, and evidently thought high enough of me to offer me a job, and I took it. And so it's taken advantage of opportunities when the opportunities present themselves.
Tell me your earliest memories of Beaver Lake. What do you remember? How far back do you remember about Beaver Lake?
Earliest memories are when I was in college, and I started in college at U of A in '68, and so it had just filled up, if you will. All I knew was it was a nice place to go and swim and that type of activity. That's my earliest knowledge about it. I didn't think a whole lot about it. Didn't think a lot. I wasn't from the area, so I didn't see any of it as it was filling up or they building the dam or anything like that. But like I say, I just thought I had seen North Fork, I had seen Bull Shoals, I'd seen Greer's Ferry. During the time I was growing up, I'd seen those lakes, and I thought, boy, this is nice to have a lake like that right here.
How has the lake changed over time?
Well, lakes age. When you talk about lakes, everything changes. Everything in life changes, and as they grow older, they change in water quality. Excuse me. If you don't pay attention to the water that runs into a lake, that feeds into a lake, then you can do things. Man can do things that would deteriorate the water quality. It can speed up the aging of a lake, but a lake will age naturally. That's just part of the process, just like the human process. It's just the process of aging. So the water quality has changed. The fisheries aspect of it have changed. Normally, a lake will peak from a fishing standpoint, and I love to fish. It'll peak in its early years, say fourth, fifth year. You still got a lot of the timber that you didn't remove out of the lake when it filled up. You still got a lot of that there, and over time, then that deteriorates and rots and goes away. So the fisheries aspect of a lake's change over time. The activity on the lake, it's just fascinating to me to see how many people, fishermen, get out there and shotgun start, take off in their boats and go in little tournaments and everything like that. The activity on the lake has increased dramatically, in my opinion, just in my time of being here at the district. I think the events that, from a water quality standpoint, the events that we see, how muddy the lake gets. I've seen the lake, again, in my tenure here at the district, I've seen the lake, so much debris come floating down that it looks like you could just walk across the lake there at the intake. When we designed the original plants, you design a plant from a treatment standpoint and the size of the basins and things like that in order to accommodate a certain turbidity, and that's kind of relate that to how muddy the water is out there in the lake. And the turbidity that it was designed at was like 350 units of turbidity that it was designed to handle. And I've seen over 600 two times. And so the events are more drastic now. The rainfall events, the turbidity getting higher, are more severe now than what they used to. I don't see it anymore. I've seen the lake before be frozen, again, almost to the point that it was frozen all the way across at the intake. You never see that anymore. But anyway, there's just things that have changed about the lake just in my 28 years here that I've observed. And I observe it a whole lot closer now than what I used to. Let me add one final thing. Even with the change, it's remarkable to me that the lake is still a very, very high quality drinking water source. It has not deteriorated from the standpoint you can say that it still is a high quality. The dangers that come into it is because of the development, human development, residential development, commercial development, all of that that contributes to the quality going into it, that's changed and is changing. It's changing rapidly. And that's the thrust of our source water protection program, is just controlling that development, not eliminating the development, but controlling the development so that it is done in the proper way so that it won't harm the lake water quality.
Talk about how the district has changed over time from being the steel plant, and then you've had several expansions along the way.
Well, a lot of it predates me, which again, that's for me to explain about it is kind of hearsay. The original plant was around a 10 or 25 million gallon a day water treatment plant. Almost immediately it was expanded because they found that a treatment basin, that didn't work the way that they really needed it to work, and so they kind of scotched that. They abandoned that treatment unit and built a new treatment unit, and it worked a whole lot better for them. It first started really producing water like 65 or 66. When it was first producing water, it was owned by the city of Springdale. Again, this is back in the 60s, which predates when I came out here in 91. Only Springdale was the only customer at the time, and again, the plant and the operators were employees of Springdale water utility. Around 1970, there had been interest shown by Rogers in Bentonville to also get their drinking water from here. The district was formed in '59, and there was a board since 1959, but it was just a board. Now, they were active, and the one that did a lot of their running and formal work was Mr. McGoodwin. He was very instrumental in filing the forms and the requests and the releases and doing the design work and things like that for the board. When they first started up the plant and started producing water, the board applied, I believe, for a grant from the federal government and got it, and they built the intake, and they built the intake before the lake was filled up. So it was in the dry, and but the lake filled up and they started producing water. Around 1970, the board, when they saw, and Mr. Joe Steele was on the board at the time, when they saw that that they were going to be serving more than one customer, then Springdale could no longer be the owner. So Springdale sold the land and the treatment facilities, all the infrastructure, to Beaver Water District. And Beaver Water District started functioning at that point as a utility, independent utility. And they hired Richard Starr from Fayetteville. He was the city engineer, I think, for the city of Fayetteville. And they put together in '69, they put together a memorandum of understanding. And it still exists today. And it laid out, what the district would do and what the cities would do. But all 4 cities at that time were named on that memorandum of understanding. So then they started functioning as a district. They ran the business at that time after they bought it. Rogers and Bentonville came online, I don't know, around 72, 73. They actually were served by the pumps that served water to Springdale. And then and all this time they were expanding the facilities, the treatment facilities. Then Fayetteville came on about 75, 76. There was an expansion around that time, and had smaller facilities built like Rogers Pump Station, which served Rogers and Bentonville, because they were served initially through a 24-inch line, and then they added another 30-inch line to that. But it ran through Rogers and then into Bentonville, and the meters, there was a meter here, and then there was a meter at Bentonville, 2 meters in fact. And so that's how we come up with the billing is, you know, here's Bentonville's, here's the total, subtract out, and you get Rogers' water bill. And then they added Fayetteville pump station. But there's small things came along. Fluoride, we used to custom fluoridate. We fluoridated to Springdale because each one of the cities are served individually, independent. It's not just one big pipeline. The pipelines for Fayetteville, there's 2 now. Initially there was a 36 and then a 42, I believe. Those go to Fayetteville. They're not tied to Springdale's lines. Springdale serves Springdale. Now Rogers 2 lines, they bought Bentonville's interest in those 2 lines, and Bentonville laid another line out here. So all 4 of them are independent, and they own the transmission lines. The cities do. But that's kind of how it all came up to the time that I came out here in '91. And I already knew the infrastructure that was here from working with McGoodwin, Williams, and Yates and being involved. Terry Williams with McGoodwin, Williams, and Yates designed an irrigation project. It took the backwash and what we call the blowdown water from the said basins. It took that into a big holding tank, a big circular pond out there that we have, and then it pumped to area farmers, and they used it for horticulture crops and growing blueberries, strawberries, green beans, grapes, peaches. Fred Van Zandt had peaches, tomatoes. So it's truck crops, horticulture type crops, and that functioned very well. We didn't charge them anything for it. They repaid a farmer's home loan for the pipeline it took to get it to their farms, and it stretched all the way over to Pinnacle Champions Country Club over there to the west. It served up to the north about the Rogers city limits. To the south, down here, it went to Fred's, and the Eubanks brothers had some interest down there. So, I mean, it was pretty widespread, functioned very well until development got such that they found it more lucrative to grow houses than grow crops. And so they started selling off their land. It finally just kind of went away. Joe Bishop was, he kind of run it and managed, and his was grapes for a long, long time. So anyway, that was really one of the last things I worked on before I came out here. Rogers elevated tank was another one that towards the end of my career there at McGoodwin, and I've been there 10 years. And I came out here in '91 because there was a major, what Beaver considered a major expansion. They were no longer going to increase the capacity out of steel. Steel had grown to the point that it was around 50 million gallons a day, but you really had to rattle the bolts to get that much water out of it, and we did. It was very tense to operate a plant at that rate, but we did, and we were building a new 40 million gallon a day plant. So everything north of what's called, I think, Star Road coming into the steel plant over there, everything north was just scrub brush and small trees and like that. Then that was the first movement, and we owned the property, but we built administration, maintenance, operations, and built a 40 MGD water plant. James M. Montgomery was the engineers that did the major design, and McGoodwin, Williams, and Yates was subcontracted. So I really worked on that and was involved when they were designing that. So I had an understanding of what was going to be. What Richard hired me for out here was to be the owner's representative. So I watched the consultant and I watched the contractor. So I was kind of an inspector type work for 2 years. I was in the construction trailers. And I knew everything about every hole, every pipe. I'd crawled every place that could be crawled. as they were building it. So I had a good understanding of that. And then we kept on. We refurbished a lot of the old steel plant, doing some work, and I continued to work with Montgomery. It became Montgomery Watson Harza engineers. James M. Montgomery did. Continued to work with some of their engineers, and they moved them around all over the place. But one young man was Bill Hagenberger, and they had moved him to Florida. Then they moved him back to Tulsa. Tulsa Utility came over. They were going to build a new plant, and they came over to see our plant, see Montgomery's design, and then Montgomery was their engineer. So our plant and what they call their Mohawk water treatment plant at Tulsa looked just almost the same, because the same engineer designed it. Bill worked over there. He closed out the project at the Mohawk plant, and he did a couple of small jobs over here for us and during that time frame too. Like I say, construction was just almost continual. My responsibility after I finished up was had oversight of the laboratory, and Dan Fields was the plant manager, and he had oversight of operations, maintenance, electrical and instrumentation departments. Then Hardy Croxton announced that he was going to retire from the board. He had been board president for 40 years, and the board didn't feel that it was right, simply because they have the authority. If somebody resigns, retires, passes away, whatever, the board can fill an unexpired term. But they didn't feel that was right, that they fill it, because who they were looking to fill it was Hardy's son, Casey Croxton. And so Hardy retired, and then they are elected position. So he had to run for it, and he ran, and he won. He was unopposed, and they served 6-year terms. So Casey, in essence, replaced his dad on the board. At that time, John Lewis, who was also wanting to retire, and he told me a lot of these things, but the board, and at the same time that Hardy retired, then Richard announced his retirement as engineer manager. So they're going to have to fill that slot. I'd been here 10 years at the time, and they interviewed me, and they selected me to replace Richard Starr. I'm only the second CEO of Beaver Water District, or the second manager of Beaver Water District. Dick served for 30 years as engineer manager. At the same time Hardy retired, then the board was restructured, and like I say, John was wanting to retire himself, but he agreed. The other board members asked him to be president of the board, and he agreed, and they asked him to mentor me because I wasn't familiar with the functions of the CEO, and so he mentored me during that period of time too. I became CEO in 2001, and I've been here 28 years.
Question? Tell me about the mentoring by John Lewis. First, I guess maybe tell me a little bit about, who was John?
Who was John Lewis?
How did his mentoring impact you as a manager?
Well, John Lewis was, at the time that I took the position, he was CEO of Bank of Fayetteville. And it was a bank that he created, that he built. And shortly after that, and again, he moved out of that position, and he retired from the Bank of Fayetteville. John's mentoring, and I guess my definition of what I'm saying, that he mentored me, and what was so important, he talked to me, and he did it, he committed his time, whether it was once a week, every other week or whatever, he would come out and he would either come out or I would go in and sit down in his office at the bank and we'd talk. Sometimes it's about business, sometimes about problems that I was having. So, it could be really anything. It just gave me somebody to talk to, somebody influential, somebody on the board, somebody to guide me and make suggestions and bounce things off of. What I felt was necessary to move forward. And he would evaluate that. He would give me his evaluation, his opinion. Sometimes he would suggest things that, since we are a public entity, I would have to say to him that we can't do that. You're private in the banking, we're public, and so a public entity can't do that. So part of it was education, my education to him in regard to what could be done. But a lot of it was just the talking, Scott, talking to him and him giving me his opinion. He was very, very instrumental in lots of things from a management standpoint, whether it be compensation, expansion of staff, the appearance of the district. I would bounce things off of him and he would agree, and then he would carry the load with the board. It wouldn't be a hard sell to the board with him being on my side. And so a lot of the direction that the board chose to go, and the board is always, they have not micromanaged the management, but they provide excellent guidance. And it's not like they don't ever say no, or they don't ever reprimand or say something, be critical of my opinion or any of the management's opinion. But they don't get into the details. And that's what was told to me was that's why we hire very good people, is to take care of the details. But we're very critical on ourselves to make sure that we do take care of all the details, that there are no slip-ups, that we've never had a non-compliance issue on water quality, and we're very proud of that. So we try to make sure that we don't embarrass them by making mistakes. John, in one of his quotes, talks about, that's how you grow, is making mistakes. But it is always handed down to me from Richard Starr to John Lewis to Hardy Croxton. The business that we are in is zero tolerance. We cannot make mistakes. And that has been drubbed into my head. I try to apply it to the rest of the staff, realizing all the time that everybody makes mistakes. But it just goes to the criticality. If you are expecting to make mistakes, you will make mistakes. You don't look at something with as critical an eye. If your goal is to not make a mistake, then you try to go over everything that could possibly impact that decision in your mind, in meetings and things like that. So again, if you make an accidental mistake, that's one thing. If you make a mistake because you're lackadaisical and you don't plan well, that's a different thing. And so it's those type of mistakes that we eliminate by saying that we have a zero tolerance for mistakes. And that's true from my standpoint. That's true whether it's the water quality, or whether it's a publication that may go out from here, or whether it's a decision financial. Are we off a certain amount when we have an audit done? Everything is zero tolerance. Do the due diligence and do the job right. But for John, that was mentoring to me, for his guidance that he gave me, and for all the load that he carried on behalf of the district. That's what it was to me. And it was invaluable, absolutely invaluable for a kid that grew up farming, that didn't know a lot of things. John knew his way around Washington very, very well. And we made lots of trips to Washington, D.C., and that was valuable to me. The work that I do, a lot of it is political in nature, be it local or national or whatever. And that was very important to have his guidance, for him to teach me things that he knew and share his tacit knowledge with me. So that was the mentoring that John did for me.
Tell me first about this hiring of the staff and paying market rate or whatever. We talked about that earlier.
Well, again, it was our idea and our concept that in order to not only gain a new employee, to be able to compete with whatever the market was for that employee, the nature of work that they did, then you had to pay above competitive rate. You had to offer above competitive benefits, not only to gain that employee, to first hire them, but also to keep them. And if it was an engineer, then you had to compete with consulting engineers. What are they paying? Again, based on their experience level and things like that. But what are they paying? If it's an accountant, what are they paying? If it's a maintenance person, what are they getting in the plants, industrial plants around here? Again, based on their qualifications. And we've always gone after what we felt were the best, not settling for, well, we only got one application, so we're going to hire that individual. No, we go out again and we advertise again and we talk to people and we try to find the individual. But the most important thing, we can compete financially for that talent. But the most important thing that we've always held here is that they fit what our culture is, that the type of people that are here, and this culture, if I had to define it in one word or a few words, would be, we're more like a family. Now, family doesn't always get along. It doesn't mean that, your brothers and sisters or your sisters, you're always, just happy and kissing one another and that type of stuff. It means that you can work together and get the job done when it called for it. And so that's kind of the culture here. We're very close-knit, relatively small. I think we're up to 57, 58 people now. Back when I first came here, far, far less people. But we were moving. When Richard retired, a lot of, and it wasn't just Beaver Water District, it was a lot of utilities. What nature that a district would assume is hold things close to the vest and fly under the radar type deal. So that way, you stay away from some problems. But a lot of utilities in the United States now take on a different philosophy, which, again, that's what I did too. I want people to understand what we do and how we do it and the dedication that the staff has to doing it right, and thereby build trust. And if the people trust you, they're willing to accept if you stump your toe and you have an accident or something, they trust you. And the district, especially a drinking water utility, has to be trusted. They have to feel that you have their best health interest at heart, that you're out to protect their health as it relates to drinking water. And so in order to do that, you have to be more open, wide open. You have to answer questions that people ask. They have to see what you do. They have to know where you're at, so they understand more and more about it. So that's when we hired Amy Wilson as Public Affairs Director. That was what we were getting into. That's the vision that both John and I shared, was we want people to know. John had a drive for education and talk about little kids' education. His philosophy was, and our education programs kind of developed and built on that, was that if you can teach the small children, and I know that you're a teacher, if you could teach the children the facts and the ways and the cultures and everything of what you want them to understand, then, and it's something that's different than what has been in the past. So water education, if we can teach the children, then they'll know more than the previous generation. And they'll ask their mom and daddy questions that their mom and daddy will have to struggle and probably research to find the answers to, of something that they've seen. And so their mothers and fathers, they get smarter about water too. But then when those children grow up to the next generation and they have children, and those children, and so it just builds. It's like a pyramid. It just keeps building. And that knowledge about water and drinking water and all of that, but that was his philosophy. And that's what we try to practice, is to teach not only children, but adults, but our education programs wrapped around children. And so we provide resources to schools and to teachers around the area on water education. Our curriculum, if you will, has been approved by the Department of Education. So a teacher can use it if the teacher wants to. And we'll come into the school, we'll bring the kids out here, we'll do anything. We'll provide, what do you call them, teaching plans, education plan for a course. If a teacher wants to take that, they've already got the outline, the course outline prepared for them. Now, they can manipulate it the way that they wish, and a lot of the teachers in the area were involved in developing that curriculum. So that's our education program, and then we just expanded into our public affairs to try to reach out to more and more and more people, and we continue to do that and continue to grow in that. But a lot of that was driven by John. Where we're sitting today, the administration building, there were several reasons for building the administration building. One was because of security. The general public, if they came and visited us, they'd have to come to the administration building, which was on the campus. That was a security risk. They'd have to get on campus. We own this 10-acre block here where we're sitting. So from a security standpoint, we could build a building here, the public could come into here, and we could still maintain security of what the important infrastructure out there is. That was one reason. The other reason was we wanted the public to come see us. And so we wanted to invite them to come on out. And so we had to build it separated off. And another reason was we was out of room for people. I was adding people so fast, I'd put them in the kitchen, I'd put them in the closet, I'd put them in different places. We were out of room for our staff. It was growing. And so we built this out here. And it's proven very, very, a lot of the components of it, and it was David's idea. He said, you need to do this under the LEED process, LEED, Leadership and Engineering, Leadership in Energy Efficiency Design is what it stands for. It's a program where you score and you rate it out. And so this facility, including the grounds that it sits on, is rated as a LEED Gold facility. There's only one step higher, which is platinum, but LEED Gold is very significant. There's very, very few places in the state of Arkansas. I think the Clinton Library is a LEED Gold facility. The Heifer International facilities, it's a LEED Gold facility. You have to incorporate lots of things, natural light. You have to, the insulation in the walls is recyclable products. It's ground up blue jeans, is what it is. A lot of wood, renewable resources. No use of any environmentally harmful components like in glue or paint or anything like that. The water recycling, the water feature out here, it's really, really beautiful. But it has a function. It is the use, and we use water, that same water that we recycle from waste process water over there at the plant, to irrigate the plants with. So our parking lot is pervious concrete. You can pour a drum of water on there, it'll soak right through the concrete. It doesn't run off. And a lot of that, and the bioswales, catching runoff water and letting it soak into the ground rather than running off, and that improves water quality. So that's a demonstration to, and we've had them out before. Contractors is going to build a subdivision, what can we do and stuff, and we could demonstrate, we could show them things that are beneficial to water quality. So, and again, the lead deal, that was all John's idea. He wanted us to go, even the car that I drive, which is a company car, I drive a Highlander hybrid. He wanted to demonstrate that we're environmentally friendly to the environment. So it's a very energy efficient vehicle. And that was John's idea, suggestion. So you asked about mentoring earlier. Lots of great ideas that people blame on me or give me the credit or whatever. A lot of them came from John Lewis.
One other thing, when you started, the district already had a reputation as a very good utility.
Absolutely.
I feel like now that's kind of elevated, where the district is almost considered in the elite among the country.
Yes.
I mean, how is it rated, and how have y'all accomplished this?
We are considered, and that took effort as well, getting the recognition from your peers. Due to our visibility and our involvement with national organizations, that's if you fly under the radar, no one knows if you're doing a good job or a bad job. So you have to be involved. You have to be involved with the American Water Works Association. You have to be involved with the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. There's only 2 utilities in the state of Arkansas big enough to be in AMWA, Central Arkansas Water and us. It is the big dogs. It is the big California utilities, the New York City, the Bostons, the Tampa, the Miami-Dade County utilities. It is big utilities. One award that we're very pleased and honored about, there's 2 awards. One, the initial award was being recognized by the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, AMWA, with an award of excellence called a Gold Award, and we received that several years ago. The next award that we currently have is the Platinum Award, and very few of those. Normally 5 or less are given out each year across the United States. That's recognition by your peers. That is recognition, and in filling out the application and everything, you have to adhere to it's called the 10 attributes of a well-managed utility. That wasn't just developed by AMWA. It was developed by AMWA, AWWA, EPA, a lot of different water organizations, and it goes to, and each attribute is named, of how you manage the utility. And if you don't adhere to those 10 attributes, then you don't get that award. And so it's the management of the utility that is being recognized as being excellent. And but it's the involvement of the utility. If the utility elected not to be involved, they wouldn't be recognized. And you couldn't say to the public that, look, our peers have judged us as being outstanding. AWWA, it takes a lot of years to develop to the point that a person can serve on the Water Utility Council. That is a council within AWWA. I sit on the Water Utility Council, but you can't just say, hey, I want to be on that. You've got to have given years and years of voluntary service to AWWA, serving on other committees, national committees, and being involved. I was a director of AWWA. And I'm not saying this to tout me. I'm saying that the district had to provide the leeway for us to be involved. And so I've asked the staff, be involved, be involved. It'll pay dividends to the district if you'll be involved. If you'll go to these meetings, if you'll hold this office, involve yourself. So that's how, and you can't get it by, again, flying under the radar. And that's one of the things I think that Richard understood, the direction that the district needed to go. And I highly, highly respect the man for, he stated that to me before, that I knew that I'd taken it as far as it could go. Now it needs to go in a different direction. It needs to be more open. I can't do it. I'm not wired that way. It needs to be more open and visible to not only the public, but other utilities and things like that. So you either take on a leadership role, you develop a leadership role, and we do that a lot for the good of drinking water utilities all across Arkansas, or all across the United States. You either take that leadership role or you don't. And we've taken that leadership role.
Good. You've talked about a lot of your board members, but tell me a little bit first about Walter Turnbow and then about Curtis.
Yeah, they'd always fuss with one another, usually about what variety of pie we would serve at the district meeting. But no, they were really, really close friends, and they both very, very good directors for the board, and both in their own way, not to the level that John was, but there's mentors to me as well. I would seek their counsel in regard to lots of different matters, whether it be Curtis was from Fayetteville, both of them from Washington County. The cities don't appoint. Again, these are elected officials, and there's 3 from Washington County and there's 3 from Benton County. That's the way the law reads. It so happened that Curtis came from Fayetteville, and John was from Fayetteville, and Walter was from Springdale. And so they didn't represent a city, and yet that's where their input, that's where their strength was, political strength was within their own city. But yeah, Walter and Curtis both very, very good board members. Board members for, I think both of them served over 30 years. It was a matter of dedication, because it definitely is not a matter of how much they get paid to be a director of Beaver Water District, because at the time that they were serving, they only got $20 a meeting, and you had to come to the meeting to get your $20. I mean, it got to the point that, you know, they were asking me, hey, don't pay me. This is more of a nuisance to me than it is anything else. So just don't pay me. And I told them, I said, I can't do that, because it states in the law that they will be paid. It could be as low as $20 a meeting. It could be as high as $200 a meeting. So what they did was and it was Walter's idea, they said, because he had done a similar thing at Springdale Water Utility, he wanted us to start a scholarship in memory of Hardy Croxton and Joe Steele as 2 of the founders of Beaver Water District. And they would donate their fees or dues or whatever. They'd donate their revenue to that scholarship fund on an annual basis. It was their money. They could do with what they wish. So they made that donation to it. And all the board members do it. And all the board members still do it. They don't get a dime from Beaver Water District. Well, they get a dime, but then they turn around and donate it to a scholarship fund. The scholarship has evolved into a scholarship out of the University of Arkansas, so it's made to the University of Arkansas Foundation for that particular scholarship, and it goes to students. The deal is the student has to be from one of our 4 customer cities. They have to get their water from Beaver Water District, in essence, is what it says. They have to, so if it's a student from Fayetteville and they're either in bio and ag engineering, civil engineering, or crop, soils, or environmental science out of the ag college, if they're in any one of those fields, then they're eligible to receive the scholarship. And it's primarily for upperclassmen and graduate students. So, Walter came up with the idea of the scholarship and everything, and that just speaks to his dedication to the district. And well, there's been lots of very, very good board members that have been in the past. The board has totally changed from the time that I came in as CEO. All the board members are newer. I guess the one with the longest tenure is David Short. David is retired now. He was the CEO of RVS Bank, Benton County. He has probably the longest number of years. Still very, very active on the board. Excellent. All the board members are very good board members. We just had one board member resign, Kathy Fouracre, because she sold her and her husband Mick sold their house, and she is no longer a resident in Washington County, and her position came out of Washington County, so she had to resign. They live in Benton County now, so she could no longer serve. So the board at their January meeting will take up one matter of business, which is to appoint someone to that unexpired term. Kathy, because of her knowledge of the Arkansas legislature and her profession with AT&T, enormous benefit to Beaver Water District in Northwest Arkansas. Bill Watkins is our current president of the board. Chris Weiser out of Washington County. Woody Bassett out of Washington County. Mary Gardner out of Benton County. And they're all just excellent. We've had board members come on in the past that may have been given erroneous information and have a particular viewpoint of the district. But after a 6-year term, all of that's changed. They really see, because they see what the district is. They see how it's managed. They see the importance of it. I think it was, and there was a video on it. I think it was David Short. He was doing an interview, and he made the statement that he took it for granted. When he came on the board, he took the importance of Beaver Water District for granted. He took drinking water for granted. Lots of things that he didn't have the knowledge about. And he said, but after just one term, one 6-year term, he said his opinion is totally changed.
One of the other things I want to talk about is, you've done a good job with expanding the plant and, staff and stuff. But what about this effort shifting toward watershed protection and watershed education? How did that come about, and how successful has that been?
Well, it came about, again, through visits with John and I. Again, the vision for it was to build a program. Two things. Number one, the education I've explained previously, John's vision and viewpoint in regard to education. So that became an important concept, as well as the public outreach. And again, as I mentioned, that led to hiring Amy Wilson. And it hired later on. At first, we contracted it out, and then we took it in-house, the education program. So all of those, hiring those people, developed out of that vision. The watershed, we had known for a long time, and we've been involved with watershed efforts of monitoring. We really hadn't developed a good source water protection program at the time. That led to, again, the district adding in another position, that position was for Bob Morgan, Dr. Robert Morgan, and his primary job when we hired him was to develop a top of the line source water protection program, and he did that, and he did it in excellent form. Somewhere in that, through efforts of John and other Walter people on the Northwest Arkansas Council, they encouraged and got the approval and buy-in from the Northwest Arkansas Council, the exec group, that Beaver Lake was really important. It is important for lots of different reasons. So water quality was really important. So the Northwest Arkansas Council then established a committee, which I was on that committee, of different leaders that were involved and worked towards, well, what are we going to do? So that evolved into a study by Tetra Tech of how do we maintain the water quality of Beaver Lake. If you maintain the water quality, you also maintain the scenic beauty of it. And so to some people it's fishing, to some people it's skiing, some people it's just the beautiful resource that's sitting out there. And to us, it's drinking water. So lots of different reasons for maintaining that water quality. And out of that was born the Beaver Watershed Alliance. So things just evolved. The initial vision was that, hey, we're going to expand the program. We're no longer just going to monitor and on a case-by-case basis try to keep bad things from happening within the watershed. We're actually going to develop a plan whereby we can work towards that development of that plan. And then the most recent thing that happened was we developed a philosophy of the watershed and things like that, and talked to, what do we need to do? And in general terms, that's the way philosophies go. But the specifics of it was borne out in Bob and the district's source water protection plan, and the development of the Beaver Watershed Alliance and the strategy that was born out of the Tetra Tech plan, the strategy whereby to go, what are we going to have to do in the next 20 years to accomplish this goal? And anyway, the most recent things was the fulfillment, if you will, for that watershed, that nonprofit watershed group, was to make them more sustainable and to make our program more sustainable, was the dedication of a certain level of funding on an annual basis. So every 4 cents that our wholesale rate is, every 4 cents of that rate, or 4 cents of that rate, is set aside to our source water protection fund. And out of that fund, then we fund the services of Beaver Watershed Alliance. So that funding, and we've asked for, and we still solicit the other 3 wholesale utilities to do the same thing, dedicate. So what that dedication means is that every time that the cities pay their water bill, that 4 cents of that per 1,000 gallons goes to. And so our CFO, Adam Motherwell, he takes that and he sets aside, he'll fund the bond fund. So we have to make on our debt, we have to make payments. And so he sets that money aside. He sets money aside for the O&M fund. He sets money aside to these different funds, the depreciation fund, and all these different funds. And he sets that 4 cents. That's just as important as the debt service. We might not fund our reserves, but we'll fund that 4 cents because the board says you dedicate 4 cents of every 1,000 gallons you sell to that fund. And so as you go through time, that keeps growing because we're selling more and more and more water every year. And that number keeps growing of what we put in that source water protection fund. So our program, that again, can be fully funded to accomplish that goal.
Good. Why is it, or let me back up and be sure to restate this, but I know that availability of water has been so critical to the growth of Northwest Arkansas. Even going back to the 90s, they were looking at
Right.
how are we going to keep this going. So talk about the importance of water, good, clean, affordable water toward the growth of the region.
Well, the availability of good, clean water is absolutely essential. It's essential to individuals to drink the amount of water that they ought to drink in order to keep them healthy. It has to be clean or you might get sick from it. So again, the quality of it has to be spot on. And we're regulated by federal regulation, state regulation in regard to the parameters and the quality that you have to have. But just like it with an individual, you've got to have it. You cannot, an example, the Cargill plant in North Springdale uses 1.8 million gallons of water a day. Now, if you did not have 1.8 million gallons of water a day to provide to them, they could not have the production level that they have. Neither could the Berry Street plant that Tyson has, or any poultry processing plant around. Neither could any of the industry if they had a demand. Rockline Industries, they produce woven wipes, Clorox wipes, baby wipes, all different types of wipes. When they ship that out, most of the volume, the weight that they send out, most of the weight that they send out is water. So they're not as big as a processing plant, but they are a big water user, and they are very, very, very critical of the quality of the water because they are governed by Food and Drug Administration in regard to. So the wipes, some of them are medical wipes that they have to, be very critical in regard to quality aspects. If we couldn't produce the quality of water and the amount of water that we produce, you couldn't have. Rockline couldn't expand, which they've expanded. They couldn't function. They would move out if you didn't have the water. So if you got all of that base that's currently here, if more people move in, and there's more people moving in, and you couldn't accommodate all of the thousands of people that work for either Walmart or Walmart vendors, more people couldn't move in if you were limited on the amount of water. You'd have to say no. Now that goes against everything that a Chamber of Commerce wants to say, but you've got to have the water there. You absolutely have to have the water. Some people understand that and some people don't, but you have to have the water. There are parts of the United States that, why in the world they developed the development that they built there out in the middle of a desert, Las Vegas, and Lake Mead is it is critically low. What's Las Vegas going to do if Lake Mead keeps on going lower and lower? Number one, they have to shut off the power to Southern California because they get a lot of power out of that lake. But they've got to have the water for the people to drink, for the restaurants to be open, for the commercial enterprises. They've got to have the water. Now what they're doing, and a lot anymore, if you don't have the resource available, you start reusing water, the effluent from wastewater plants. You start reusing that, and you make drinking water out of wastewater effluent. You start, if you're on the coastline, you build a desalinization and you take the salt out of the seawater and you make drinking water out of it. It's a technology they've had for a long time above on naval ships and stuff like that. That's where they have desal plants. Well, a lot of ships are nuclear powered, so again, energy is not a problem, but it takes an awful lot of energy, and that jacks the price up. And we're very critical in regard to the price of the water because Tyson's or Cargill processes birds with it, and again, those birds are dead. They don't care what it smells like, tastes like. They don't care about the disinfection is really important because again, the Food and Drug people will come down on them if their back tees are higher. But the water, they've got to have that. And if you jack the price up too high, then that affects when you go to Harps and buy a chicken, then the chicken price is going to have to be higher. Their profit margins are cut, and so they make decisions on that. So you've got to have economically priced, very high quality water. And most of the water, probably less than 1% of the water we produce, is actually consumed. Most of it goes down your toilet. You use it to wash your cars, your dishes, your clothes. So you actually consume, but I've got to assume, the district has to assume that every drop of water that goes out of here, you are going to consume it, or your children are going to consume it, or your grandchildren are going to consume it. So again, that's the level that we have to operate.
If you had to tell somebody who didn't know anything at all about Beaver Water District, about the district, something kind of brief and summarizing it, what would you tell them?
I would tell them about Beaver Water District that it is a highly recognized drinking water utility in the state of Arkansas, that it is the second largest water utility in the state of Arkansas, and that it has a very dedicated staff that protects their health in regard to the water that they drink and consume. I think that's what I'd tell them, Scott.
The best thing about Beaver, finish this sentence and restate it. The best thing about Beaver Water District is?
Best thing about Beaver Water District is the people.
Okay.
Their dedication, their knowledge, their skill sets. They're very good at what they do. They do an excellent job. And it takes a very dedicated person to do the job day in, day out, because I mean, we get vacations and time off and stuff like that. I don't mean to imply, but this place runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year continuously, over and over and over again. And most of the time, because of what people don't know about the district, they take it for granted. You wake up in the morning, you go in and you turn the tap on and you get a glass of water to drink. You put water in your coffee pot and you make your pot of coffee. You take that for granted. The only time that you get aggravated is when the pressure is not quite what it ought to be. Your water bill is higher than what you think it ought to be. It is discolored, and so people complain. But you take it for granted that continually you always have that service. The lights may go out due to an ice storm, but you've got water. There'll always be somebody here at the plant. And like I say, because of the lack of knowledge about what we do and how we do it, and people taking it for granted, very seldom do they get a pat on the back for all the hours that they work. Or if we have a storm event and the lake is as muddy as chocolate gravy. Lots of overtime, lots of hours, lots of anguish go into making sure that the people have the quality of water and the amount of water that they need. And they don't get a pat on the back. So it takes an awful lot of dedication on those people's part to do a job like that.
Complete this sentence, and you've already kind of talked about this, kind of try to make it like a sound bite. The water quality of Beaver Lake is important because?
The water quality of Beaver Lake is important because it can impact your health. It can impact your recreational time. But I think the most important thing to us is that it can impact your health. the water quality of Beaver Lake, there are things that can happen to it in regard to algae. Most people are aware that it, at certain times of the year, it has an odor to it, their drinking water, or it might have a taste to it. And that's really caused by algae. But if the water deteriorates, if the water quality deteriorates to a point that algae, the population of algae, the concentration of algae, certain types of algae are such that they produce cyanotoxins. And a cyanotoxin, if you go swimming in a body of water that has cyanotoxins, it will, in essence, burn your skin. It will cause skin irritations. Concentrations could get as high that it could be dangerous to a person's health if consumed. It'll kill a dog, it could kill a cow, it could kill a human if the concentration are such. We don't have cyanotoxins at this point in Beaver Lake. There have been cyanotoxins in lakes like Grand Lake. U.S. legislator got a skin rash, bad skin rash, had to go to the doctor because of swimming in water that had cyanotoxins. So even from a recreational standpoint, it could be harmful to your health. But from a standpoint of producing drinking water by using Beaver Lake, it helps to maintain the cost of the water to you. It helps in the level of anxiety that we may have. Muddy water is a lot of times harder to treat, cold muddy water especially. It's harder to treat. So if you can maintain that water quality, it improves our ability to easily treat the water. And again, that's why it's important. It's important. We always look at things from a health aspect, though, but it has financial implications too.
One last thing I don't think we've talked about on recording, we did earlier, but talk to me about the Secchi Day event. What is it? Why do you do it? And how successful has it been?
The Secchi Day event came about more from a public relations standpoint. The idea was to get people knowledgeable about the water quality of Beaver Lake, which we've discussed, the importance of maintaining water quality, and again, being more open with the public so that they understand more about why you need to maintain that water quality. That was the gist, that was the vision for Secchi Day is involvement of people. So we have an event that once a year, we get volunteer water scientists. They go out on the lake, they spend their own time. We provide the equipment for them to use. They go out and they read the Secchi depth, which really relates to the clarity of the water. As you drop the Secchi disc down in the water, you see till it goes out of sight, and then you record the depth that is. And then you drop it on down, and you pull it back up slowly until you can see the disc, and then you record your reading of the depth. Like I say, it mainly relates to the clarity of the water. The clarity of the water down by the dam is much clearer. You can see further down in the water than you can down to the south, closer to 412 Bridge, Hickory Creek, that area. That's the way it will always be, just because of the nature of the lake. But again, what's this year compared to last year? And to get the people to turn out. And now, we've expanded that. We've grown it. There's hundreds of people that come. There's hundreds of people that volunteer. We use it not only for us, but other agencies and entities, groups that are involved in water quality in some form or fashion. And we use it as an education day for the general public. Serve hot dogs and give away prizes and do things like that. But it's for the public to get more involved and have a better understanding of the water quality of Beaver Lake.
Is there anything else that we talked about that you want to add to the interview here? Anything maybe important that I haven't thought to bring out?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, we have found it extremely important. Again, the vision that we had in regard to public outreach and education and things like that, and the environmental aspect. There's a lot of overlap between education and the environmental group or department here. Lots of things we do out within the watershed. One of the things that we did within the watershed, and we spend resources, is to and we spend resources and we connect to partners, whether it be USGS, ANRC, NRCS, the Extension Service, lots and lots and lots of partners. But one group applied for and got a federal grant on the West Fork of the White River that it was around an $8 million grant, I believe. $4 million coming from the federal government and $4 million from local. It's a match. We put up some of the resources, either in-kind services or cash. The Walton Family Foundation put up some resources on that, so we matched it out. But it is it involves not only stream restoration work to stabilize the banks of the stream so you don't get as much erosion, as much sediment into the stream. And the West Fork is identified as one of the primary targeted streams that flow into Beaver Lake. But it also involves federal programs with farmers and property owners that take on improvements to their farm called best management practices, BMPs, which help water quality. We're involved with the county and looking at county roads. We're getting involved with more and more projects that really can be implemented that will really do some good for that. So we're proud of that. The importance of the outreach, one of the things that we've started too is called a Citizens Water Academy. Citizens Water Academy, we send out invitation to, and people that we're after in that, it's not just general adult education about Beaver Water District. It's leaders in the community. It could be, and we've had council people, we've had other leaders in the community that had influence. They have influence locally. They could have influence statewide. We started last year. We're doing it again this year, and hopefully do it year after year after year, and let that grow so that you have advocates for Beaver Water District, important advocates for Beaver. And there's been lots of leaders that went through that program. We've offered it also to our customer cities. Back on the West Fork project, that project has been used as the poster child by the American Water Works Association on one of their big initiatives over this past year. But and there's a project in Iowa and one in New York, or New York City's environmental component. Those three areas have been some of the main ones, but Beaver Water District and that West Fork project, that initiative, the initiative was for cooperation. Instead of a utility, which has occurred locally, not in our watershed, but locally, from Oklahoma standpoint, when the city of Tulsa, in essence, sued Decatur and poultry companies for contamination of their water source, and that case was settled, and it dealt with poultry litter and all of that. But what we're trying to do is show that through a cooperative effort, we can do things to improve the health of a watershed. So AWWA strongly supported the Farm Bill. And what we were looking to get out of it, which we got out of it, was to carve out in terms of the amount of money in the Farm Bill, to carve out a very small amount of money of directed within one of their conservation programs that would be give a preference to a watershed and the implementation of these, so them to make more funding available within a watershed that is a drinking water source. So we strongly supported the Farm Bill. The component of the Farm Bill that we wanted, that carving out of resources for drinking water watershed, we got that. And the Farm Bill passed, and AWWA, and we're very happy about that. Because that is a big source of funding for programs. It was on the West Fork project, $4 million, I believe, that the federal government committed to that. And we want to see more of that. And Beaver Water District was one of the leaders in that, and I'm very proud of that, that we were. That's just you had asked about the leadership and involvement and the recognition. Normally you don't get recognition, even if you don't ask for the recognition. You don't get the recognition unless somebody knows about it. And lots of people know about Beaver Water District, and lots of people know about our position and what we've done in the source water protection program. Bob Morgan, he served on the Standards Council for source water protection. So he helped write the standard that is AWWA standard, and we meet the standard. I mean, go figure. He wrote it, so we meet. He wrote both our source water protection program, and he wrote the standard whereby source water protection programs are judged. And that didn't come accidentally. It was intentional. Beaver Water District is a great, great utility. And hopefully more and more people will know about it and understand it and have trust in it. There's still lots of challenges, both from a production standpoint, and we're doing planning right now to expand some more. So it's kind of a never-ending deal. We always, and that's another thing we're very proud of, we stay ahead of the curve, and we plan to stay ahead of that curve so that as the population, as the production grows, we've got the facilities, we've got the infrastructure to take care of it. And I take a lot of pride in that. One of the questions you didn't ask, you asked something along the line, how's it changed? Since I came out here, we've expanded the infrastructure, so it was a 40 million gallon a day water treatment plant when I came out here. It's a 140 million gallon a day water treatment plant. We had one intake, now we've got two. We have intake capacity of 150 million gallon a day. We have plans for extension, in essence, the extension of our clear well to the west, so that we can accommodate from a pump station over west of 49, our customers or anybody within these two counties. Part of my frustrations that I've seen since being here, because of the lack of knowledge, and you're familiar with one, some utilities and some decisions by the decision makers are predicated more on personal ownership than they are upon good, hard, sound business facts. And they're based on politics. And I think we have always tried, and we have always accomplished that, run it as a business and done a good job at it. And when you base things on politics, and sometimes you set a utility up for failure because you really don't know all the facts of the matter. And I've seen that happen. The best thing could happen, two things, that I've been serving on a task force for the legislature, and it deals with water, drinking water and wastewater. The two primary principles that we are encouraging is consolidation. Some utilities just don't have the resources that we have to accommodate. most all of the staff, by the way, that I've added, most all of it is what I consider to be overhead. Not all of them have that ability. It's too expensive for them to get. So that impacts your management of it. But the two things out of that task force is consolidation, regionalization, that aspect, in order to make a sustainable utility. Some utilities are really, really, really small. You need to take about 5 or 6 of them really, really small utilities and make one utility out of it or something. And the other thing is education. Children and adults. And primarily, even if necessary, mandatory education by people that sit on the board or a council that govern a utility. Because if you sit on there and you know nothing about rates, and if your idea is kind of like, we're never going to raise the rates, well, we're never going to raise the tax, that's really ridiculous. That you will have to. Things change, prices go up, so you're going to have to. But you need to know something about the business of a water utility, and that's what, in our opinion, that's what the people need to know if they sit on a council or a water board or anything like that. For a long time, Scott, we put forth a lot of effort to get our board members to go to a national meeting of AWWA or a national meeting of AMWA, and even our board meetings, a lot of it is education. Get them to understand what our business is, our facilities, our infrastructure. At the end of 6 years, they know a whole lot more than when they came in. So anyway, education is vital in lots of different ways. And consolidation, regionalization is vital to make these. That's our concern is not just for our customers, the people in these 4 cities. It's for the state. And so we take on the leadership role of other utilities to try to make them sustainable so that they can do just as good a job as what we do. It's not the desire that's lacking by utility managers all over the state. It's the resources that's lacking.